Hello, and welcome back to Mythic Sky Storytime. I'm Dr. Laura Tad, and this is the 8th show in my new series, Cosmic Costumes. In this episode, I will discuss the transformative sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the 8th sign in the Zodiac, and the word itself quite literally comes from the etymological roots of the word scorpion, from the Greek, Scorpios. The glyph that we use in astrology, the symbol that we use in astrology to illustrate Scorpio, looks sort of like an M with a tail and an arrow coming off of the end of the M, the last line of the letter M. It is a sign that we associate with the planet Pluto. Prior to the discovery of Pluto in the 1930s, planet Mars was the planet most associated with this sign. If you've been listening to this series in order, you may have noticed that we're now a little more than halfway through the Zodiac. And one of the things that is occurring now that we are past that halfway point is we are also looking at the sign that is in polarity, the opposite sign to the sign that this particular show is on. And the opposite signs are those that occur 6 months before or after, 6 months different than the one that we are exploring. So Taurus is the polarity point, is the opposite sign of Scorpio. It occurs 6 months prior to Scorpio in a calendar year. Part of how we understand Taurus is in relation to its opposition to Scorpio and vice versa. So as I walk you through the understanding of this sign, I may discuss Taurus as well to help you see their contrast, or the way they are contrasted and the way that they are complementary to each other in their polarity. So as I have been discussing throughout these episodes, every sign of the Zodiac is tied to an element, has an elemental association. And with the sign of Scorpio, we find ourselves back in the element of water. Scorpio is the second of the water signs, Cancer being the first. And all water signs are tied with emotion. They are feeling driven. They are receptive like the element itself. Water signs tend to be more sensitive and intuitive and moody because of that receptivity, that malleability, that movement of the element itself then can be reflected in how that sign is expressed, and the emotional swings, the emotional movement of highs and lows and going inward or being very outwardly expressive. So with Scorpio, we have this merging of the element of water, this emotional receptivity, with the modality of the fixed energy. Now, all fixed signs occur in the middle of seasons. So in previous episodes, for example, I talked about Taurus being this polarity point. Taurus is also a fixed sign. Taurus is fixed earth. By contrast, Leo is fixed fire. Now with Scorpio, we find ourselves in the realm of fixed water. And fixed signs, in the fact that they are in the middle of seasons, tend to be the most intense, tend to be the most powerful. Isn't quite the wrong word, but there's this intensity to them because they are the middle of seasons. It's the most expressive in some ways, whether that's emotional or through action. It's this height of energy, this completion of energy before we then move into the following sign, which would be a mutable sign where it's waning. The season is waning. In the fixed signs, it's the middle of seasons. It's the height of seasons. So fixed water, Scorpio, we find ourselves in the middle of fall in the northern hemisphere. And all of these fixed signs, all of the fixed signs have a lot to do with this culmination of energy. There's a magnetic quality to them. And you merge that then with the scorpionic water, so emotionally magnetic, emotionally attractive, emotionally powerful. There's a controlling quality that you can see with this sign as well, because it's so powerful that it can be emotionally controlling, potentially emotionally manipulative, as I'll discuss. But there's this intense emotion, intense emotional experience and emotional expression that can also manifest, so both outwardly and inwardly. It can sometimes manifest in a freezing quality as well, because it's so intense that it can result in sort of an all or nothing. Scorpio in general is the sign that probably more than any other is vulnerable to that all or nothing way of walking through the world. There is a unyielding energy that the fixed signs have, this determination to push through any inertia, to keep going, to push through, to persevere. And so within that, there can be some resiliency, but it's also very intense. And there can be sort of pushing through at any cost and not necessarily paying attention to the implications or the repercussions of one's intense stamina and forward pushing, because it isn't necessarily inclusive of others. There can be a determined energy that can sometimes manifest in self-absorbed energy, self-focus. We see that particularly with Leo, but we can see some of that with Scorpio as well. With the combination of the fixed and the water, then it's this persevering, this enduring energy, this controlling potentially energy that is mixed with emotional expression or emotional interaction. So as I was saying at the beginning of the show, every sign in the zodiac is associated with a planet. And that archetypal understanding of the planet can sometimes help us understand the sign more. And with Scorpio, we find ourselves for the first time in this series of shows in a situation where a sign has both a modern and a traditional ruler. Meaning that prior to the discovery of Pluto in 1930, we associated Scorpio with the planet Mars. Today, we associate it with the planet Pluto. And it doesn't mean that Mars is unrelated or lacks relevance when looking at Scorpio, but it has appeared through the observation of those of us in the astrology world that from an archetypal perspective, Pluto is more reflective, a more accurate archetypal expression of the sign of Scorpio. So who is Pluto? Pluto is the god of the underworld in mythology. He's Hades in the Greek pantheon. Pluto archetypally then deals with what's hidden, with death, rebirth, transformation, because being the god of the underworld, that is the realm of the dead. Now, in these Greco-Roman myths, the realm of the dead, the underworld, is neither heaven or hell. It's where all souls go. It is not hierarchical. It is simply where all souls go. It is the hidden, unseen world of the dead. And it is where things change and transform and can be rebirthed. Pluto is associated with change, transformation, intimacy of all kinds. Scorpio as a sign rules sexuality, but it's also all forms of intimacy, emotional intimacy, as well as physical intimacy. Pluto also governs the taboo. That's part of its relationship with the hidden, with the unseen, with the things that society likes to hide away, that hidden energy, what is taboo, what is forbidden, or is part of the underground part of a culture we see showing up with that Pluto archetype, as well as that scorpionic symbology of things that are hidden, things that are unseen or pushed aside or hidden away. And with Mars as the old ruler, there are some parallels. And Mars as a planet is associated with the day Tuesday, martes in Espanol. So Pluto doesn't govern a day of the week simply because there's more planets than there are days of the week. And when our ancestors, when the ancients were finding these correlations between days of the week and planets and luminaries, Pluto is not visible with the naked eye. Therefore, he's not given a day of the week. But Mars, very visible, is given Tuesday. And Mars as an archetype, right? He's the god of war. There's this anger and quest energy that we see with Mars. And so that does dovetail into Scorpio. There can be some of that questing energy, that desire energy in particular that we associate with Mars. That driven, desired energy. With Scorpio, it's to dive deep. It's not rushing. It's wanting to go down deep and explore deeply as opposed to more surface level, which is where we see or how we see Mars as it's expressed in Aries. In Scorpio, it's going to the depths of things. There is some of that hero quest energy that you can see sometimes with a Scorpio, but again, it's going to the depths of things. It's saving things that are at the bottom or hidden, bring it ultimately to light, that rising of the phoenix. So looking more directly at Scorpio, right, we've seen a little bit of, in terms of the mode and the element and then the planetary parallels. Looking directly at Scorpio, Scorpio's key phrase is I desire. So we can see that in that Mars energy, that desire going after things, but it's also that intimacy and the depth of wanting that we see with that Plutonian energy. Now, Scorpio as a sign then has a lot of that in play. Scorpio can be compulsive, but it can also be covert and secretive. It has a intensity to it that can be really beneficial, but it can also be destructive, particularly self-destructive. Scorpio often gets interwoven with guilt because the intensity that it projects out into the world can sometimes be too much for other people to engage with, that then can become internalized and become guilt or shame that can show up with that scorpionic energy. In it governing intimacy and governing sexuality, there is the intimacy that shows up in Scorpio, but also issues around the fear of intimacy issues around being open to being that vulnerable. Because again, with Scorpio not knowing how to do things part way, that intensity of it, that always big, not knowing how to dip a toe, that to be intimate in that scorpionic sense is to really just bare your soul, which is very vulnerable. And so that scorpionic energy can either be very closed off or vulnerable. That level of vulnerability can then be momentary and then shut and be very self-protective. It is the scorpion. Scorpions will sting themselves if they fear they are in danger. So there is a self-protective quality to Scorpio that in that vulnerability, in that desire for intimacy, in that intensity, if it feels unsafe, wherever we have Scorpio in our chart, we feel unsafe, unprotected, it can become volatile or very self-protective or lashing out of fear, because one of the things that Scorpio can be associated with is phobias. So there is this fear of worst case scenario. The depth that Scorpio is able to be connected to, the awareness that Scorpio has of how bad things can become, can result sometimes in fear or paranoia because Scorpio is aware of worst case scenario. It's not oblivious to it. And that can sometimes result in a sense of feeling powerless, because even though Scorpio is about power, conversely, it can be experienced as a sense of powerlessness. There's a resourcefulness, though, to Scorpio, that ability to go deep, to mine the possible solutions is a key piece to that scorpionic energy, and part of that polarity to Taurus that's about resources, but that can be more surface level, gathering resources as opposed to mining them, which is more of the scorpionic energy. As I've said, Scorpio rules intimacy and sexuality. It's this merging of energy is really how to understand that. And as I've been discussing, just like Pluto is about the taboo, so is Scorpio. That which is hidden, that which is confronting to society is perhaps a good way of understanding it. Part of its association as well with Mars, Scorpio can be about violence. It's about that intensity. It's not good or bad in that intensity. The intensity of Scorpio it's a funny way of thinking about it. It's like it's neutral in its intensity. It can be intensely passionate and supportive and championing those around them and ourselves, and it can be intensely protective of self or others. So there can be sometimes an association with Scorpio of manipulation, of violence, of the darker parts of society. That's part of that hidden, part of that idea of shadow. What is it that we're not wanting to look at about ourselves? What is it that we hide away? So that hidden can also be hiding away parts of ourselves, both the parts of ourselves that are less together and less shiny and pretty and positive, as well as hiding those parts of ourselves that are excellent. That hiding away, that secretive energy of Scorpio is not simply that we hide away the bad or the ugly or the taboo that is an unaccepted energy. It can also be hiding away that part of ourselves that is beautiful, and even changing what we think of as taboo. Taboo is within cultural context. And so what was taboo in certain cultures 50 years ago, not as much today in other societies. Even what has shifted in the last 20 years, what was taboo becoming mainstream. So as I've discussed with other signs, every sign is also associated with physical parts of the body. So Scorpio being associated with sexuality, it quite literally governs the reproductive organs. That's part of that death, rebirth, transformation in terms of reproduction itself. It also governs our reproductive organs and genitals in the sense of that desire and passion and sexuality for the pure joy of it, for the passion of it, regardless of reproduction or not. That Scorpio governs the act of sex, not necessarily reproduction. It can fall into some of that, but it's not exclusively that. It's simply sexuality and the passion of it and connecting with our libido and our desire, right? So that desire to go after things in life, that desire for another person, that desire for experience shows up. And part of how that's understood and expressed is through the genitals, through our reproductive organs. So switching gears a little bit now to look at the psychosocial development expression of this sign that I've been talking about in each episode. And again, it's not so much that when we are in these ages that I discuss that we're in sort of a Scorpio period of life or a Leonian period of life. It's more how a sign is reflective of certain psychosocial stages of development, and that we can still be engaging with that archetype before and after that time period. It's just that each sign has parallels in its archetypal understanding to different ages and stages of development. So we're now moving into mid-30s, mid-40s. And this is a period where we often are re-examining what our beliefs are, what are our ideas. This phase of adulthood is really when people are becoming more and more entrenched in some ways in their ways of being, their beliefs, their ideas, their habitual patterns, day in, day out routine, really having that solidified to some extent. It's also seen as a time of a lot of growth and change. People are deeply into forming careers, raising children, into partnerships. It may be the beginning and endings of partnerships, times of divorce and second or third marriages, part of that intense transformation. It's a time of change and growth and exploring what needs to change, what personal work, what self-care, what do I need to be doing in my life to continue to evolve and grow and or sustain my life the way it is. If I want it to stay how it is, what do I need to keep doing? If I'm wanting to be promoted, what do I need to be doing differently? If I'm wanting to feel healthier, what do I need to be transforming? If I want to deepen my partnership, what work needs to happen? That is a lot of this time period of mining that, of seeking information and searching for how to enrich one's life really begins during this period. It doesn't mean you don't do it after. It doesn't mean you never did it before, but this time, particularly mid-30s, mid-40s, becomes more and more of a theme in our lives often. As it's a time of raising children, it can bring up our own unresolved, buried issues from our own childhood. So it may often be a time when people themselves end up in therapy to work through unresolved childhood trauma being one of the things that we sometimes associate with Scorpio because of that intensity. So this can be a time period to resolve those things, or it can be reflective as a time of when we are resolving these things or begin to want to. Doesn't mean we find resolution, but it may be when we start to mine that and reflect on that as we see in our children or the children in our lives parallels to our own childhood. There can be a desire to heal those old wounds and not repeat certain things, or just release that so that we don't have to carry it forward in this time of growth and change and evolving. What do I need to let go of, which is part of that scorpionic energy, so that I can go forward powerfully without the burden or the shame or the self-blame that is that very scorpionic energy of where I did and didn't succeed, or the mistakes, or what one might perceive to be mistakes. How do we let go of those? So this can be a time of exploring that, to heal it, to let it go. As the polarity point of Taurus, Scorpio really has a lot to do with how we interact with the world around us. Taurus as a sign has a lot to do with our sense of personal worth. What I value, what do I need? My sense of security in the world that is in some ways unrelated to other people. There's a self-focused energy in the Taurian expression of that. Finding ourselves in Scorpio, it is very much, how am I safe in the world in relation to other people? In that exchange of energy, that intense interaction with others, that's part of why we associate it with sexuality, but it's energetic exchange of all kinds. How am I safe in the world? How am I maintaining my sense of power and personal possession in relationship to those around me, as opposed to in isolation? That Taurian earth energy can be very stable and consistent and not moving very much. You merge that intense energy, as they're both fixed signs, with the polarity of Scorpio that is water, and there's a malleability to it. There's a movement to the intensity of Scorpio that is all about how it's interacting with the world. And we see that with the element. Water is all about how it interacts with the world. Rivers shape the earth. And so we see this interaction of Scorpio in relation to those around us. How do I understand my role on the planet. How am I contributing? How am I interacting with others? How are my actions being received by those around me? How are my emotions being received by those around me? And understanding that at a greater level, or understanding how to be expressive and feel heard, feel seen, feel as though our emotional needs are being met, learning how to do that effectively and in healthy ways becomes more and more of a theme as we get deeper into our 30s and into our 40s. That desire to have our emotional needs met and remain authentic is part of this theme, this scorpionic theme of mid-adulthood that we see with that scorpionic energy. And on the back end of this, the latter part of this scorpionic phase, when we get into the early to mid 40s, we often see this as the time of the midlife crisis. And part of how we can understand that in relation to Scorpio is people reflecting on the life that they're living versus the life that they want. And if those are really deeply misaligned, what do we need to change to course correct that? What do we need to let go of in order for the life that we want to be the life that we are living? Are there things that we need to pursue and have desire to go after? Are there things that we have to let go of that we are no longer passionate about, that perhaps we once were, or we thought we were, but once we were actually pursuing them, it turned out to not be what we anticipated? So that can be part of this period as well. What needs to end? What do we need to complete? What do we need to let go of so that we are living our most passionate, fulfilling life as we move forward, as we move deeper into adulthood, deeper into our lives, and ultimately in the next sign in Sagittarius to have that exploration that we see with Sag. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, as this is Mythic Sky Storytime, we're shifting into the part of the show that is looking to story to help you understand Scorpio, looking to myth to help you understand the sign. So to help you get Scorpio, have a deeper understanding of this sign, I thought I would tell you the story of Maui. The story of Maui, or stories of Maui, are found throughout Polynesia and the Maori people. So while you may make the direct association with the Hawaiian Islands, and that is part of the story, this particular version of his story that I'm looking to is from New Zealand, although the indigenous people have a lot of overlap in their myth between Hawaii and New Zealand. Same peoples. But this version of his story is from New Zealand. So as the story goes, one day, the gifted and clever god Maui was in a funk. Concerned about his son's mood, his father, Mikatuntura, the guardian of the underworld, asked him what was wrong. "It seems," said Maui, "humans spend their whole lives simply heading towards death." "Yes, my son, you are right. All humans go from being vibrant like a flower and then wither and die, eventually being taken by Hinehitipo, the goddess of night, and brought to the underworld." Frustrated by his father's answer, Maui began to pace back and forth as he thought aloud. "But why? Why must this be so?" he pondered aloud. And then, with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "What if Hinehitipo were to die? Then all humans could live forever." Disturbed by his son's suggestion, his father said, "Be careful of thinking in such ways, for no man could conquer death." But Maui protested, "Father, you are talking about humans conquering death, not a god. What if I were to conquer death?" Distraught, his father replied, "My dear son, like any human, you too must die. Confused, Maui said, "But I'm not human, and my mother prophesied I would live forever. Besides, I have performed many miracles. I have conquered fire, subdued the sun. I have drawn up islands many humans dwell upon, drawing the earth up from the depths of the sea. Death is but another opponent for me to conquer and outmaneuver." Beginning to lose his temper, Maui's father replied, "You are not in the upper world, but in the lower world with me. Your cunning wit does not serve you here." And he continued, "Although your mother prophesied you would live forever, when I baptized you, I mistakenly left out a key part of the blessing. My mistake overrode her prophecy. Thus, I know you must die at the hands of the goddess of the night and the receiver of the spirits of the dead." Maui's father continued to describe this goddess of the night, this courier of souls. But Maui tuned him out, beginning to hatch a plan to conquer this goddess. Ignoring his father's warnings, Maui headed to the woods to share his plan with his friends, the birds. Maui shared with his feathered friends that he believed he could reverse the birth process by crawling through the goddess's body from her vagina and out through her mouth. He would grant himself, and thus all humans, immortality. He had come to them because he needed their help to find her. But once he had begun the process that he had laid out, they must stay silent as to not alert her of his presence. After a short journey, Maui and his friends discovered the goddess of the night. She was sound asleep, her legs wide apart as she slumbered. Removing his clothes to make his journey as seamless as possible, Maui entered headfirst between the goddess's thighs and into her body, slowly making his way up toward her mouth. His feathered friends struggled to hold back their laughter at the sight of such an endeavor. Struggling to stay silent, the birds watched as Maui began to make his way out of the goddess's mouth. As his head began to emerge like a child crowning at birth, the birds found they were no longer able to contain themselves and laughed at the ridiculous scene before them. Instantly, the goddess of the night awoke. Realizing what Maui was attempting, she closed her thighs, breaking him in two and killing him instantly. And thus, all humans remain mortal creatures to this day. So as you can see, it's a bit of an odd myth, but it does reflect many of the themes of Scorpio around death and birth and transformation, around power and change, around trying to conquer death, trying to change what has been written and transform things, transform the outcome. It's also given the way in which Maui attempts to change things, the way he chooses to enter the goddess is also reflective of the scorpionic energy and sexuality, and this relationship of death, rebirth, and sexuality. I invite you to reflect on the story more and see where else you may see some parallels with the scorpionic energy in his story. So now, moving into the meditation part of this episode, I invite you to find a place to sit or lie down where you can be comfortable for about 20 minutes is about the length of the meditations. And so you can be in a chair, you could be sitting on the floor on a meditation cushion. You do want to make sure that you're sitting somewhere where, or however you're sitting, it doesn't pull you out of the meditation. You want to make sure you're comfortable enough to sit for 20 minutes. And as with other episodes, we'll begin with belly breaths, where you're going to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth slowly. I'll do the counting for you. I will then lead you through a guided imagery of going up and down the chakra system, the energy centers that run up and down the body, and then move into a guided imagery, guided meditation for you to converse with some scorpionic energy, scorpionic manifestation, so that you have your own relationship and understanding and perhaps transformation yourself to deepen your understanding of the sign. Okay, so once you're settled, we'll begin. Feel free to pause the show until you're ready. So, we're going to begin with taking 4 belly breaths. So breathing in through your nose slowly. I'll do the counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause. Exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. And inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause. Inhale again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhale completely. 1, 2, 3, 4. And pause one last time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Exhaling completely. 2, 3, 4. Now finding yourself still breathing deeply. Return to sort of a normal, natural rhythm for you to breathe, but still paying attention to your breath in and out. And bringing your attention to your base chakra, your root chakra, the bottom of the spine. It is from here that we ground, that we stay connected to the earth, connected to being in our bodies. Point of discipline, of hard work, of definitiveness. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to sacral chakra, second chakra. This is the center of reproduction. It's very much associated with Scorpio. It is the center of power, of receptive and directive energies, of exchanging of energies. Again, center that is scorpionic. How we give and receive. The center of power in that respect. And bringing your attention now up one more to solar plexus, just above the belly button, below the rib cage, in between your belly button and rib cage. Solar plexus, sun center. From here we radiate. Different kind of power here than in the second chakra. It's the center of emotion, how we emotionally engage with the world to some extent is found here. Our ability to be emotive, to feel deeply. Connect with our own depth. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to heart chakra. Just right where your heart is, middle of your rib cage. This is the center of love and compassion, our ability to be loved, or our capacity to welcome love, our capacity to love others, ability to access compassion and empathy for ourselves and the world. Heart-centered. It's the center of the chakra system. And bringing your attention now on your next inhale to throat chakra. The center of communication, of speaking, of listening, receiving information, communicating that verbally, orally, finding language. The power of your voice resides in this center. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to third eye. This is the center of vision and clarity, just in the forehead between the eyebrows. This is the center of wisdom, clear view, of knowledge that is not intellectual, things you know in your bones, things you are aware of even if you couldn't rationally explain them. This is the center that helps you access that information, the center of perception. And on your next inhale, bring your attention to crown chakra, center at the top of the head. Crown chakra is the center often depicted in religious artwork, Christian religious artwork, of a halo. It is the part of us that is connected with the divine, God, goddess, spirit, source, whatever your language is for the divine. This, your crown chakra, this center, is a direct line for you to connect with that higher energy, your higher self, and the divine. A divine source of energy, of light and protection and universal love and compassion, of boundless, endless empathy. And on your next inhale, we're now, having tethered ourselves to the divine, going to bring that energy back through the chakra system, engulfing and encapsulating you with divine light and protection that will be like a cocoon of support and guidance, holding you, swaddling you before we move into the guided meditation. And so bringing down this gold light from the divine, have it travel through your body, through the chakra systems, golden light shining out like a miner's light from your third eye, illuminating the shadows, illuminating the things that are hard to look at, but with a clarity that the fear is dissipated and you can look at things honestly. Continuing to breathe and moving the light down, have it now travel through the heart, through the throat chakra, healing those wounds of not being heard, not speaking up. not feeling listened to. Healing any edges, softening edges where there's fear to speak your truth. And continuing to bring that light down through your body, now through the heart, healing heartaches, heartbreaks, grief, sadness. Let that gold light from the divine, from Source, God, Goddess, heal your heart, heal the grief. Let it wash away, bathe in this golden light. And as you continue to bring the light down through the body, through the central channel, now in the solar plexus, let it heal emotional unrest, emotional confusion, emotional volatility. It's okay to feel. You can be empowered by your emotions, but not governed by them. Let them be a source of power, internalized and connected to the divine, connecting with your own greatness. And bringing that light down into the sacral chakra, second chakra, healing imbalances of receptive and directive behaviors and actions, attitudes where maybe you rush when you should pause, or pause when you should rush. Let this golden light help to bring into balance that teeter-totter of action and non-action, for both are necessary depending on the situation. And continuing to bring that light down into base chakra, root chakra, let that golden light help you to be grounded and consistent, but not stuck. Stable, but not stuck. Consistent, but not constrained. And now with this golden light moving up and down through the body, so encircling you like a cocoon, you are protected in this bubble of golden light. As we move into the guided meditation, in your mind's eye, see yourself walking on a beach at low tide with the sun high in the sky. As you walk, you hear the waves crash, even though they're further out, the tide is low. And the sand is damp beneath your feet. As you walk, you come upon a cove that is only accessible because the tide is so far out. Curious as to what it looks like inside, you make your way into this rock formation. It's dimly lit, with damp sand beneath your feet. But enough light is peeking through that you can find your way without a lamp or flashlight. Your eyes adjust as you stand there in the cove, slowly walking towards the back end. And there, as you make your way to the back of the cove, your eyes now adjusting, your body adjusting to the lack of sun shining upon you. You find an old woman in a dress the color of seaweed. beckoning you forward. She takes a hold of your hands. You find them surprisingly warm, given the environment you both stand in. She looks deeply into your eyes, and as she does, you know she is here to help you today. Reflecting on the parts of your life where you have struggled to let go of things or people who are no longer supportive or healthy aspects of your life, who no longer champion you in the direction you want your life to go. See what suggestions she has. What does she recommend you do or say to make moving forward and letting go more comfortable, less scary, more certain? How can you reframe this letting go and see it as an opportunity to make room for something new, something beautiful to come into your life? If you've been navigating grief and loss, what might be helpful for you at this time? What does she recommend to help you transform this loss into deeper connection, multidimensional connection? What will help How can you transmutate your heartbreak into healing? As you stand with her in this cone, ask for clarity if it's needed, whenever it's needed. Other questions arise, or questions that would help clarify things for you come to mind, ask them. Seek her insight and wisdom. What suggestions does she have to help you have a healthy relationship with power? How can you connect with your inner power to walk through your life empowered rather than projecting your power, having power be about control? How can you be empowered for yourself? Lead an empowered life. The things you need to let go of or things you need to take on. What does she recommend you do or say, actions you take to connect with your passion, your passions in life? Passions for things, passions for people. What does she recommend you do to engage with these things you are passionate about in a healthy, productive, balanced way? How do you take hold? Let yourself engage in a passionate way in your own life. Are there things you need to let go of, or things you need to bring in? Things you need to allow? And as your conversation starts to come to its natural conclusion, see if she has any suggestions about how you can reconnect when you encounter times in your life when you're struggling to let go or connect with your inner power, access your passions. Grant yourself the permission to express passion. What does she recommend? How does she recommend you reconnect if and when you feel it's needed? And thanking her for her insight and help today. Ask her if there's a way that she would like to be honored for her insights. What could you do as reciprocity for her help today? And parting in whatever way feels appropriate. Slowly turn around, making your way back out of the cove and back into the light of the sun. Now much lower in the sky. And as you walk on the beach, the tide now coming in, slowly make your way back down the beach, waves crashing as you walk. You slowly find yourself making your way back into your body, back into the room where you sit. Moving your fingers and toes when it feels appropriate. Leaving the beach and coming back to the present moment. Opening your eyes whenever you're ready. Take as much time as you need to just sit here, reflecting. I recommend you may want to grab a journal to make some notes of what you discovered, or you could make some audio notes on your phone. Thank you so much for joining me today on this, my 8th show of this new series, Cosmic Costumes. Once again, I'm Dr. Laura Tad, psychological astrologer. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about my work, please visit my website, mythicsky.com.